All right, so we did cybersecurity, me and Kiara. So Kiara's gonna begin with the beginning of this presentation, and then I'll pick up later after. So let me see if whenever Kiara is ready to go, just let me know when you want me to do the next slide, Kiara, and I'll just hit it for you.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay. You can go ahead to the next one.
This one? Another again?
That's good. Okay. So some background information. So first, more than 35,000 security incidents have been reported by the federal executive branch civilian agencies to the Department of Homeland Security in fiscal year 2017. And so in the 1950s, the first computers were used in places of business. And then in the 60s, companies began to be more protective of their computers. So at the time, there wasn't internet or networks. However, security was focused on physically preventing access to people knowledgeable about working with computers. And passwords and several layers of security protection were added to devices. There were also fire safety measures that were implemented to ensure that the data that was being stored was protected. In the 70s, the beginnings of cybersecurity were formed following a research project known as ARPANET, which was the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. And so Bob Thomas, who was a researcher, he created a computer program that would move ARPANET's network, which left a trail wherever it went. And this program was called Creeper. And then Ray Tomlinson, who was known as the inventor of email, created a program that took Creeper to the next level by making it self-replicating. And it was the first ever computer worm. So he then created another program called Reaper, which followed after Creeper and deleted it. And it was the first example of any antivirus software. And then in the 80s, computers became more interconnected and computer viruses became more advanced, and information security systems were unable to keep up with the constant creation of innovative approaches to hacking. So in 1988, Morris Worm was created by Robert Morris, which was a turning point in the history of information security, following the expansion of network usage in universities, militaries, governments, and the requirement for security measures to become more expansive. The aim of the worm was to identify lacking areas in a network intrusion prevention system. And the worm's ability to self-replicate was its downfall, since it replicated so aggressively that it rendered targeted computers inoperable and slowed the internet down to a crawling pace. It also spread quickly through the network and caused untold damage. So the damage was so severe that Robert Morris became the first person to be charged under the Computer Fraud and Misuse Act, and the Computer Emergency Response Team was formed as a result to prevent similar cyber issues from happening again. And then in the 1990s, the internet became more widely available to the public and people began putting their personal information online. And so organized crime entities saw this as a potential source of revenue and began to steal data from people and governments via the web. Following an exponential increase in network security threats by the mid-90s, firewalls and antivirus programs were being produced on a mass basis to protect the public. And although these firewalls and antivirus programs slightly minimize the risk of attacks, computer viruses and worms continue to come quickly and fast, and hackers thus had the upper hand. In the 2000s, governments began to recognize the criminality of hacking by giving more serious sentences to those culpable, which included extensive jail time and large fines. Information security continued to advance as the internet continued to grow. However, the viruses did too. Hackers were able to quickly create viruses that were able to target not only specific organizations, but entire cities, states, and continents as well. And in the 2010s, hacking has become even more complicated due to the consistent rise of technology. This era is defined by major data breaches such as Snowden and the NSA in 2013, Yahoo in 2013 through 2014, or WannaCry in 2017. And information security is constantly improving, and companies are coming up with numerous ways of novice attack mitigation options that utilize things like the Network Behavioral Analysis, or the NBA, Web Application Firewalls, or the WAF, and Denial of Service Protection. You can change the slide now. So some definitions would be first, cybersecurity, which is defined as the prevention of damage to, protection of, and restoration of computers, electronic communication systems, electronic communication services, wire communication, and electronic communication, including information contained therein to ensure its availability, integrity, authentication, confidentiality, and non-repudiation. Cyberspace and its underlying infrastructure are vulnerable to a wide range of risks stemming from both physical and cyber threats and hazards. Sophisticated cyber actors and nation states exploit vulnerabilities to steal information and money and are developing capabilities to disrupt, destroy, or threaten the delivery of essential services. And cybercrime is a crime with some kind of computer or cyber aspect to it. So some of the challenges of cybersecurity. So the first one I want to address is an emergent corporate breed of cybercriminals. Cybercriminals are adopting corporate best practices to increase the efficiency of their attacks. Some of the most enterprising criminals are selling or licensing hacking tools to the less sophisticated criminals. For example, professional criminals that are selling zero-day technology to criminals in an open market where they're quickly commoditized. Gangs are also offering ransomware as a service. And so ransomware freezes computer files until the victim is able to meet the monetary demands and then take a cut for providing the license. And there are entire ecosystems of resources for cyber criminals to leverage. So Kevin Haley, who is a director at Symantec, said advanced criminal attack groups now echo the skill sets of nation-state attackers. They have extensive resources and a highly skilled technical staff that operate with such efficiency that they maintain normal business hours and even take weekends and holidays off. We're even seeing low-level criminal attackers create call center operations to increase the impact of their scams. So next is the security of third-party vendors. In the instance that a third party gets hacked, a company is at risk of losing business data or compromising employee information. For example, the Target breach of 2013, in which 40 million customer accounts were compromised as a result of network credentials being stolen from a third party heating and air conditioning vendor. So a study in 2013 found that 63% of breaches that occurred that year were connected to a third party component. You can go to the next slide now. So next would be the increased use of mobile technologies by customers. Hacking has become easier due to a growing number of online targets. According to a 2014 Bain & Company study, mobile is the most used banking channel in 13 of 22 countries and comprises 30% of all interactions globally. Consumers have begun to use mobile payment systems, and banks that are competing with financial technology startups will have to recognize the importance of customer convenience, as well as weigh the potential fraud losses from a more inconvenient user experience. Some institutions are also utilizing advanced authentication to confront these added security risks, allowing customers to access their accounts via voice and facial recognition. Go to the next slide. So, proliferation of the Internet of Things. Internet of Things focuses on the idea that a wide array of devices, including appliances, vehicles, and buildings, can be interconnected. For example, a morning alarm going off to wake a person up could also be automatically notifying a coffee machine to brew coffee or a toaster to make toast. It revolves around machine-to-machine communication, which was mobile, virtual, and offers instantaneous connections. Today, the number of Internet of Things devices is expected to reach over 50 billion by the end of this year. Many of the cheaper smart devices that don't have the proper security infrastructure, thus, when each technology has high risk, the risk grows exponentially when combined. You can go ahead to the next slide. So cloud vulnerability. The Oracle and KPMG Cloud Threat Report 2019 reveals that cloud vulnerability is and will continue to be one of the biggest cybersecurity challenges faced by organizations because enterprises are leveraging cloud applications and storing sensitive data related to their employees and business operations on the cloud. The adoption of the cloud is creating new challenges for firms and exacerbating the old challenges. Forbes predicts that 83% of enterprise workload will be on the cloud by 2020. Organizations using cloud make good targets for malicious hackers. Data breach, misconfiguration, insecure interfaces and APIs, account hijacking, malicious insider threats, and DDoS attacks are some of the top cloud security threats that will continue to cause problems for the firms that don't invest in robust cloud security strategy. So AI enhanced cyber threats. AI's ability to create a significant impact on marketing services, manufacturing, security, supply chain management, and some other fields, AI has found its way into mainstream business, and thus AI and machine learning have been able to disrupt each industry. The AI capabilities that have been used to identify and stop cyber attacks can also be used by hackers to launch sophisticated cyber attacks in the form of complex and adaptive malicious software. AI fuzzing. AI fuzzing combines AI with traditional fuzzing techniques to create a tool that's able to detect system vulnerabilities. In cybersecurity, fuzzing is the usually automated process of finding hackable software bugs by randomly feeding different permutations of data into a target program until one of those permutations reveals a vulnerability. AI fuzzing can help enterprises detect and fix the exploitable vulnerabilities in their system. It can also be used by cybercriminals to start, automate, and accelerate zero-day attacks.
All right, so now I'll be taking over with the cybersecurity solutions. So this first solution we have is a basic but very important. It's just even having a password and activating a two-factor authentication. So and it's not just about setting a password, it's about creating a complex password that you change periodically so that it makes it harder for a hacker to retrieve that password. Another step that you want to do too is not to use the same password for all of your data. Along with that, you want to have a two-factor authentication, and what that basically is this extra layer of security that after you input that username and the password, it prompts you to do another task. For example, let's say I want to log into Facebook and I have activated my two-factor authentication. As soon as I put my username and password, it will prompt me to enter a code. That code will be on my phone, and I input that code back into Facebook. So let's say a hacker were to be able to retrieve your password. Even if they input that password, they won't be able to get into Facebook because they don't have your phone where the code is. So having that as a solution to start with is very important for companies to do that. The very next important thing solution to incorporate is that encrypt your data. So encryption is basically converting your data into a secret code. This secret code to the general public is like basically randomized characteristics. Like it hides the true identity of what the message is. And the only way that that message can be decrypted is if the other party has the access code to unreveal the encryption. Encryption can be applied to all types of data, all networks, so that it is protected. So for let's say a hacker were to hack into a business's computer, even though they were to be able to get inside of the computer and see the files, because the files are encrypted, they're not going to be able to read the information. They won't be able to do much with the information unless they have that access code. An example of an encryption is it goes back to Caesar's cipher. This is when this kind of began. As you can see this picture with the lettering under the lock here to the left. What Caesar did was push the alphabet 3 spaces down, so the alphabet started with X, Y, and Z. Therefore, A was equal to X and B was equal to Y. So that is how he was able to code his messages so that no one could really understand, and he would give the, who he was sending it to, the key that, hey, you got to move this backwards or forwards 3 so you can understand what the message is saying. This was actually very, it was modified through the Enigma. If you guys are familiar with that, the Enigma used this. This is called a substitution encryption. The Enigma really complexed this ideology here. So this is also a second important thing for, just to decrease cyber threats. The next thing that we want to use is a virtual private network. So what this is, a VPN protects your internet data by encrypting it. It also can hide your IP address. You can also change the location of your IP address. And this will allow you to be more safe while on the internet. Now, it is ideal to use a VPN when you're on a public Wi-Fi because that's when you are most vulnerable. So let's say we're in Starbucks and you connect to the I Love Starbucks Wi-Fi that anybody can connect to. A hacker can connect to the same Wi-Fi and be able to view and see anything that you're inputting and logging in with your computer. So protecting your bank, you'll be able to intercept your banking information because you're on the same Wi-Fi as them, and they have the access to your information. Now with the VPN, what the VPN does, it acts as a shield, and it covers and protects your data as you are on that public network. So even though you're searching the web through the public network, you activate the VPN. It's a software you can download. It covers your information, and you're able to not worry about the hacker intercepting your information because it's encrypted. They won't be able to know what information you're sending out or receiving. It's also good because you won't be on the hacker's radar because you can change your IP address. So even though you're in the Starbucks in New Jersey, that hacker, you can set your IP address to be in Australia, and that hacker won't really know that you're even surfing the web because your IP address is not showing that you're in the current location of that Starbucks. So it's very important to have VPN also incorporated. The things I've talked about so far, they're all supposed to be working together. They're not be solely worked with. The next thing I want to talk about is a firewall. So the firewall is basically a device. This can be also a software, it can also be hardware. And what this does, it blocks unauthorized data from reaching a network or database. And the firewall can be customizable to allow certain data to come in and certain data to not come in. You can change the parameters so then you know what's coming to your network and you're stopping all the stuff that you're not, you're unsure of, that's unsafe. This is good because this can block viruses, malware, it can limit ransomware. So it's very important to have a firewall implemented with the rest of the things I've talked about because it's a regulator of data coming in and out of your network and database. So the final thing I want to talk about is a very complex system. It's the cryptography. So what this is, it is the process it's the transmission of encrypted data. So cryptography and encryption are kind of similar. What cryptography does, it focuses on the sending out and the storing of the encrypted data. Right. So there are two main types of cryptography. There's the symmetric key cryptography, and then there's the asymmetric key. So with the symmetric key, the sender and the receiver only need one key, one access code to decrypt the information that they're sending out. With the asymmetric key, the sender and the receiver use two keys to be able to encrypt and decrypt the information. So with the first one, the symmetric key, I have this little diagram here that kind of breaks it down. Let's say Bob wants to send a message to Mary. What Bob will do in the symmetric key system is he will write his message, I love dogs. He will use his personal key, his access code, to encrypt the message. Then he will send it out to Mary. So if a hacker tries to intercept this message, they won't be able to intercept it because it's encrypted and they need that key to open it. Mary received that information. She can use Bob's key to open that message to read the encrypted message and decrypt it. Now, this is used widely. The most common encryption that is used for this is AES, Advanced Encryption Strategy. And this is very well used with using big data because of how fast and efficient it is. With the next system I'm going to be talking about, it's a bit slower, but it's more secure. The problem with the symmetric key is that you need to be able to send that key to the other party without that being intercepted. So that is the tricky part about it. But with asymmetric, there are two keys. There is the public key and there's the private key. And with these systems that I'm explaining, I'm very simplifying it. They're actually way more complex than this. But just so that it's easy for everyone, I'm just explaining it like this. So yeah, there's two keys. There's the public key and there's the private key. So basically, the public key is the identifier. Let's say Facebook wants to send a message to Twitter. Facebook will lock their message with their public key so Twitter knows that it's from Facebook. Then Twitter has to use their access code to be able to unlock that information to view. I mean, so I'll just bring up this analogy so then it's a little bit easy to understand. So like with the PO box, right? Everyone knows the address of the PO box, you know who it belongs to, and stuff like that. So let's say Bob has a PO box, and you want to send Bob a message. Write your message, and you send that message to Bob's public PO box. But only he is allowed to open it because he has his own private key to that public box. No one else has that private key but him. So that's kind of like the two-key system. The first key, the first access code is the PO box, and the private key, secondary key, second access code is the actual key that Bob uses to open the PO box. And this is basically the simplified version of, you know, cryptography, and these are the methods to send out encrypted data, to make sure that it's secured and everything. So if all the systems that I've talked about, all of these are supposed to work together, so then cyber security threats can be decreased. Of course, everything is hackable, so even with these measures, you can still be hacked. But with these systems, especially the cryptography, it's very difficult to do so. So those are the solutions. And that is the end of our presentation. If you guys have any questions, let us know.
This is very good, actually. Really. Very good beginner. If you guys give me permission, I might use your slides sometimes when I teach. This is very competitive. I love Kiara's presentation of the hack, meaning Maurice's father was at Bell Labs, and he was a big security guy, and his son created that virus, or whatever you called it at that time, and he went to jail for 2 years for that. That was very interesting. I had forgotten about the whole saga.
Yeah, and Riley made a very good explanation of the private keys, like the symmetric and asymmetric keys. Yeah.
It was a very good tutorial for everyone. I might ask you guys to clip it in together and put it in our library of Introduction to Cryptography. Very good. Thank you.